castle on Loch Ness. It was a stronghold for the Scots fighting for William Wallace. In the time of Robert the Bruce, the walls of Urquhart stood strongly for Scotland's king. And so they stood during the First Jacobite Rebellion until the English blew the walls to bits with explosives in 1692. Jacobite. The name comes from the Latin word for James, Jacobus. In 1689, James II of England, also known as James VII of Scotland, was dethroned by Parliament, partially because of his Catholic beliefs. Immediately after he was deposed, supporters of James the Jacobites rose up in Scotland. After some initial success, that first rebellion was beaten back. The English blew up Urquhart in the wake of that rebellion. I sit and wonder if it had not been destroyed, what a sight it would make. What if Scotland had been free? What if its people had not been scattered to the seven seas and the four corners of the earth? But they were. It is done. Despite the destruction of the First Rebellion, the Jacobites did not give up there. James VIII tried to regain his power and failed. His son, Charles Edward Stewart, or Bonnie Prince Charlie, came of age with a mission of going back to Scotland and claiming his right to the throne of Britain. In 1745, he invaded with a very small force. Highlanders poured from these hills to support the Scot princes.
Present muskets to fire at Highlanders, you fire, well, sometimes the sneaky bunch, they use an old Scottish custom. It's called ducking. They allow the volleys to go right over the top of their heads, and now all three ranks, if they have fired at once, we've possibly just committed suicide. I'll explain exactly why. As soon as we fire, they allow the volleys to go over the top of their heads, they then get to their feet. They form V or wedge-shaped formations, 100 strong. The best equipped, best fighters at the head of the wedge, they make directly towards us at pace, they bust right through the lines, hacking us to pieces as they go. They then disperse through the ranks and columns, and then they take us on individually. And you don't want that against a Highlander, because then you're up against the finest close quarter fighter in Europe. There is nobody to equal them.
Not all of the clans fought with Charles. The Sutherlands fought off the Jacobites with cannon here at Dunrobin Castle. Charles and his army had great successes, taking Edinburgh and winning a victory at Prestonpans.
How long did that last? 7.5 minutes, and that was it all over. 300 redcoat dead, 1,500 captured and wounded out of a total government force of 2,500.
They made their way as far south as Derby, England, but from there Charles was forced to retreat because of friction among his captains regarding a broken promise of French support. His army was chased, but they turned and fought at Falkirk, a place of many battles in Scotland's history. The Jacobite army continued its retreat to the great moors east of Inverness, where against the advice of his captains, Charles turned to fight. It all ended here, on the moor at Culloden. The English were under the Duke of Cumberland. In the fray of the Battle of Culloden, the messenger who was taking the order to attack to the right wing of the Scots was killed. The right never got the message. So as the left wing attacked, the right flank was left dangerously bare. Cumberland jumped on the opportunity, and cannon were sent to fire down the line of the rushing Highlanders. Cumberland's artillery was accurate and very deadly at Culloden. After the battle, Cumberland earned his nickname of Butcher, as his men killed all of the wounded Highlanders on the field. Anyone who surrendered was slaughtered. Charles escaped and was hunted for 5 months. He was protected by Highlanders until he could flee back to France, and eventually to Italy, where he lived most of the rest of his life. After Culloden, the English built Fort George, an incredible structure, like no other in Britain.
It was built to quell any future rebellions. Troops that were stationed here could easily be deployed to troubled spots.
Cumberland immediately launched his campaign to remove the culture of the Highlanders, ethnic cleansing of a massive scale. It was a campaign that would last a century. First order, ban the clans.
If I find any one of you wearing a garment known as the Philibeg or the Phillimore, you possibly know it better as the Kilt, or you're wearing any cross belts or your party colours, that's the tartans if you don't know what that is, I'll arrest you immediately. That is, of course, if you survive the initial encounter with my patrol. Some of them don't, but I'll drag you back here, I will throw you in the black hole down there, I'll clap you in irons, then when it suits me, I will take you in front of the local magistrate or the sheriff, and then the least you can expect for your troubles, I'll insist upon it, is 7 years transportation to His Majesty's colonies of the Indies or the Americas. And when you go over there, even if you survive the journey, and I'm glad to say hundreds of them don't, they die on the way, when you arrive over there you'll be treated lower than a slave. So the simple message to you all is, don't wear cross belts or the plaid or the tartan, then you might not get into any trouble with me. You hope, but I'm not promising anything.
Derek Parker is with Hector Russell Kilt Makers in Inverness. They are one of the top kilt makers in the world.
For more persistent offenders, they were deported to some of the colonies, especially the West Indies, and there are several cases of people actually being executed.
We went to Hector Russell to learn more about the history of the kilt and to see how they are made, hand-stitched by the best. I was so afraid that I was going to see one of these women stick herself with a needle, but no need to worry. They are amazing at what they do.
There are many variations of the kilt, starting with the origin of the kilt, which was just a big piece of cloth wrapped around to keep out rain and cold, and then the older military kilts, onward to the full day-wear kilt, and then the modern military kilts, onward to the full modern dress kilt.
The banning of the tartan and the bagpipes lasted for more than 40 years. Then it was time for the next phase of the plan. That took us to the county of Sutherland. Upon entering the county from which my family got its name, it is worth a little celebration, no matter how staged it might be. These are the mountains of Sutherland. In the second half of the 18th century, the men of these hills and glens were recruited to fill the regiments of the British Army. They distinguished themselves in battle after battle.
These people, within a very short time of the new Highland regiments being formed, became recognised. This is not my statement, this is their Hanoverian officers' statements. They became the best disciplined, the best behaved, and indeed the most courageous of any British frontline troops. And that's a fact.
The lairds had learned that in order to get the true warrior instinct of the Highlanders, they would have to allow them to wear the tartan and to hear the pipes.